Um, it was a big issue. It was a big deal. And now there's some blowback. And Albert Breer, who coincidentally or not interviewed Nick Caserio last week, now the Texans GM, previously the Patriots VP of player personnel, reportedly Belichick ignored his scouts in taking N'Keal Harry with the first-round pick in 2019, the receiver from Arizona State. There was relationship there between Belichick and the head coach, and Harry came in and had a great visit. You don't work out when you visit the team, but had a great visit with the team. So Belichick ignored the fact that A.J. Brown and Deebo Samuel had higher ratings by the scouts who had put in the work and had done the grinding and the effort and the analysis and the vetting. And look at what Harry's done, and look at what Samuel and Brown have done. And that I feel like that's Caserio's way of saying, don't blame me. To the extent that Robert Kraft is trying to throw this on me, that the difference this year is I'm gone. No, maybe the difference this year is Belichick's listening to the scouts a little bit more because 2 years ago he didn't.
Well, all right, here the first thing I'll say is I would be shocked if it was Nick Caserio. I really would. Caserio.
Somebody's talking.
I know.
Somebody's singing.
I'll get there. You're right. I think somebody is. There's no doubt somebody's saying it. But Nick Caserio is he's like Belichick in a lot of – he's a machine. I mean, it's one of those guys. He's not necessarily Mr. Social, charismatic guy that way. That's not what he is. He's not going to charm your pants off or do anything like that to where you're just like, man, this guy's smooth. I love listening to him talk. What a great conversation. No, that's not what it's going to be. It's very, wait, here's the facts of the matter. I'm going to talk about football. He's a real football guy. He wants nothing to do with media. Albert Breer is pretty connected up there in New England. He knows a few people, and here's like another.
He interviewed Caserio last week. It was
know.
a very chummy conversation. My point is this: if it's not Caserio, Breer did him a disservice by not saying my source isn't Caserio, because
That's
anybody
true.
who's paying attention is going to look at this and say it's Caserio, who's a little bit pissed off. Sorry, London and all of the cities in the UK, because you can read between the lines, as I did, saying this is less about Belichick and more about Caserio.
I get it. I mean, the vault has been open about criticizing Belichick on all this stuff here, over the last year. So everybody's looking to, take this angle to a degree. And you're right. I mean, you're right. Albert Breer probably could have done a solid and said something like that. It's not Caserio. But here's the other thing, too, and this is why, hey, Bill's done a great job up in New England of, they for a long time, not a lot of people got out of that building. But here in the last few years, a lot of people have got out of that building. We got a few GMs around football. We got ex-coaches who were head coaches here, there, all that. And, and this wouldn't be the first time Bill Belichick hasn't listened to, the scouts board and everything like that and done his own thing. I mean, really, this is pretty commonplace stuff with head coaches who have the, last say GM word type of thing. And yeah, it's gotten Belichick in trouble. I mean, there's no doubt. But I'll say this, Mike. I was there for 2 drafts, right? And one of the drafts I could still remember. I mean, as vivid as ever. It's my first draft in an NFL organization. I'm sitting right outside the draft room. Now, the pick is going to be Jamie Collins from Southern Miss, right? 2nd round. I can remember Nick Caserio walking out of the room and his head was shaking, and I was like, uh-oh, somebody doesn't like the pick that's about to come up here and pop up on the board. And it was Jamie Collins. And I remember all the scouts and everything going, oh, my gosh, why would we take him now and do all that? Well, he was awesome right from the get-go. So Belichick was right. Also happened with Chandler Jones in another draft. So same thing where it was just like the scouts were like, hey, well, we didn't have him rated this high. Well, he's Bill Belichick. He had him ranked higher, obviously. Now, he's missed and all of that. I know that. But I don't think this is that crazy. And it goes back to my old thing, Mike, that I say. Yeah, there's too much emphasis on the person and the mental aspect instead of just the pure ability on the field sometimes up in New England. And I will always think that's what gets them in trouble in these situations.
And as I say, it's not just the drafting, it's the developing, because it's not like they are reaching for guys who aren't regarded as draftable by 31 other teams. Everyone that they pick is getting drafted by someone else. in the higher rounds. N'Keal Harry would have been drafted by someone else,
Yeah.
right? But at some point, the guy's under your tent, and you have to develop him. And that, to me, is the great chicken and the egg question here. How much of it is mistakes in drafting? How much of it is mistakes in development? And would these guys have developed into better players somewhere else? Because it's not like he's shocking us with these names that aren't even in the binder. Who is this guy? I never heard of this guy. May as well have drafted Turd Ferguson.
I like it. I like it.
I had to work it in at some point.
Yeah, you watching Aaron Rodgers?
I had to find a way.
Well, that should be your name for the rest of the day, Turd Ferguson.
All
right.
No, that was last night.
But either way, but I will side as far as that question that you posed there, which is a good question. That it's more on the true evaluation there, Turd Ferguson. All right, it's more on that. It's not on the development, because he's obsessed with development and technique and doing the right things. I've never seen a team more into doing all of that stuff. Would I want to just go? With some of these guys, and then N'Keal Harry, it was questionable about him anyways. He was a very on the fence guy, if anybody can remember back to that year. It just was, he's big. And, man, when he gets the ball in his hands, he makes some things happen. But I know I was one who, and I'm not alone, I'm not trying to pat myself in the back here, where he wasn't one of my top 5 receivers, because I was like, he never gets open. He can't get open against anybody. And that's kind of important in the NFL. But they went with the size, what he does with his ball in his hand, probably his football IQ. We met him. He seemed like such a good guy and all that. And because of that, they left Deebo Samuel and A.J. Brown on the board, who have been kicking butt, let alone with DK Metcalf as well.
Yeah, and one last point on this.
Yeah, what's that, Turd?
If it wasn't Caserio, thanks. Not the first time I've been called that. If it wasn't Caserio, I hope he made a phone call at some point over the last couple of days since the story emerged to make sure Bill Belichick knows it and accepts it, because you don't want to be persona non grata with Bill Belichick. You never know when you're going to need a job back in New England again if things don't work out in Houston. The last time I checked, they're not really working out so far in Houston. And look, I know that there are people in the media who are like, oh, you're not supposed to guess on whose sources. Well, when it's that obvious and when it's that big of a deal, what are you supposed to do? Look the other way? Well, I have no idea who he may have spoken to. He just interviewed the guy last week. So, and he was the obvious. If it's not Belichick, it's him who's the target of the comments made by Robert Kraft, especially since he's not there now. Kraft says, oh, we're doing a different approach this year. Yeah, we don't have Nick Caserio anymore. He didn't say that, but that was potentially implied.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.